Dismissing the urban mech as a useless trash can has ended the careers of many ambitious pirates and mercenaries, Commander. All the great houses of the inner sphere deploy this mech in their hundreds in a way that determines control of entire sectors. Let's go over its stats and how to use the urban mech to its maximum potential in BattleTech Classic. After that, I'll show you an experimental design that'll transform this urban warfare specialist into an efficient support mech for our mercenary company. Production year 2675, Star League era. Name Urban Mech UM-R60. Weight 30 tons. Faction all inner sphere. Role ambusher. Understanding how the successor states actually think about the urban mech on both a strategic as well as tactical level is very important, Commander. It's very likely that our contracts will one day award us command rights over local militia using this mech, or see us squaring off against this brutal urban warfare fighter. The urban mech's primary weapon is an Imperator B autocannon 10, with 1 ton of reloads in its right arm, and a backup Harman light laser on the left. Although you won't see it on very many posters or propaganda vids, the urban mech is actually one of the most common mechs in the inner sphere, making up between 6 to 11% of all light mechs deployed by the great houses. The Urbi, as it's called, is a common sight in militia and garrison units, but rarely seen in A or B tier combat regiments. Its popularity is a major logistical benefit if we do buy a few, Commander. It means wherever in the inner sphere our contracts may take us, we'll be easily able to acquire replacement parts for the unit. Offensively, the urban mech is well armed. It has a solid 10 damage piercing weapon with a moderate reach, which will make most lights think twice about engaging. Its extended torso twist allows it to defend multiple approaches or defend itself against mechs trying to flank it. This somewhat makes up for its lack of mobility. On the flip side of a coin, it's underutilized in heat management and lacks a critical hit weapon. That means we'll ideally pair it up with mechs that pack SRMs. Defensively, the urban mech is decent, but the armor is, in my opinion, misallocated. Its right torso, where a ton of ammunition is housed, is vulnerable to crits, and its legs and rear torso are a bit over-armored. It does manage to cover all 4 of its critical hit locations with at least 8 points of armor though, and it has the narrow low-profile quirk to deflect a few shots. Mobility-wise, the urban mech is horrible. It has a 2-3-2 movement profile, which makes it more of a semi-mobile turret than a true battle mech. This means it can almost never escape getting run down, and is often outmaneuvered, even in the lightest of terrain. Because of its cripplingly low speed and only mid-range weapon, Commander, I have to rate the urban mech and its variants an F. They should never be used as is in our mercenary company. Their inability to disengage from a fight and maneuver properly just make it too much of a liability. The most dangerous urban mech variant is the Capellan Confederation R60L, which trades armor to mount an AC-20. This makes the mech a big threat to even heavies and assaults. The mech techs and I have cooked up a variant that I think will fix these issues, and allow us to take advantage of the commonly available parts, Commander. But before I do, I think it's important to go over the secret as to why the great houses employ so many of these mechs, and why, while they're F tier to us mercenaries, they're actually A tier to the great houses. And for that, we need to zoom out a bit and look at the mech from a strategic level, or how this design is deployed by the successor states to organize an effective defense across entire sectors. The dirty and rather sociopathic truth is that, more than any other mech design, the urban mech is made to be a cost-efficient, expendable asset. They're best deployed in ways that trade 2 or 3 of this mech to destroy or severely damage enemy heavy and assault mechs. By deploying numerous cheaply produced urban mechs to defend a strategic asset, the great houses ensure they cripple their rivals' more expensive mobile and general purpose mechs if they do attack. Just like paying 80 or 160,000 21st century dollars for missiles to knock down a $1 million tank can be considered an economic victory, do that enough times your enemy will go broke. On a galactic scale, losing 2 urban mechs priced at 2.9 million C-bills to defeat a 6.1 million C-bill Warhammer can also be considered winning. As mercenaries, there will likely be situations where we do get command rights, and the houses that employ us will expect us to make trades like this. So let's zoom back into the tactical level and go over how to pilot these mechs to their maximum potential on the battlefield. The most important part to using the urban mech is positioning before the fight starts. The slow but well-armed mech should be moved in groups to defend choke points or key objectives where the enemy must pass through. These examples show good deployment of the urban mech R60L, the variant with an AC-20, who are going up against an opposing red Warhammer, who must move towards its key objective, the red X. The mechs begin tucked away behind buildings out of line of sight to nullify the range advantage of the Warhammer, and are positioned in front where the Warhammer must move through, thereby nullifying the opposing mech's speed advantage. In this way, no matter how the Warhammer tries to get to the objective, the cheaper and more numerous mechs force a fight at short range where their armor-breaching AC-20s are most likely to hit. Keep in mind the economics of the strategic brief during this example. The destruction of one or even two of these mechs will likely be acceptable to most of the great houses, and house liaisons assigned to our mercenary company are likely to understand this. As long as our units end up taking down the larger mechs, everything should be fine. With that being said, let's go over to the mech bay, and I'll show you a refit that transforms this urban warfare specialist to a mech that we can use in a few more situations. We're designating this experimental urban mech MERCX1 and naming it the Oscar. This change is intended to compensate for the speed issues of the urban mech by turning it into a caravan guard for our dedicated LRM carriers. It's still a bit of a situational mech, but its role has been expanded. It's now able to be deployed to garrison duty, sieges, or pitch battles. We should think of this mech like a sidekick to a Centurion, or two of them like a discount catapult. For this refit, we swapped the AC-10 and LRM-20 and dropped half a ton of armor to bring 2 medium lasers. The armor was reduced in the rear, as the mech should be protected from flanks by our cavalry and striker units. While the refit may seem costly at 330,000 C-bills, it's actually cheap compared to our other options. For the price of a single Archer command mech, we can afford 3.5 Oscars, which results in 43% more missiles on the target and 3 more medium lasers. When compared to the dedicated LRM boat, the Catapult, we get 50% more missiles and medium lasers. While the Oscar can be used in an all-mech unit fairly efficiently, it shines in a combined arms composition where it can act as a second-line defender for LRM carriers against enemy strikers. Shown as an example that a reinforced company-sized unit could be built around. 2 Oscars provide some security to the LRM carriers and marauders, while 2 Warrior helicopters spot for the group's 280 LRMs. Additional units would likely be a few PPC arm piercing units, and 4 to 6 cavalry or striker mechs to secure objectives and finish off whatever mangled enemy units make it into close range. If we wanted to scale up to a battalion size unit, a Centurion and Archer can replace the marauders for a dedicated LRM group. This brings 330 LRMs per turn to dominate the battlefield and force the enemy to close.
Yeah, we ran out of patience. Boil up with the cold hard hatred. I could feel the vibration.